It's honestly way too freaking hot to record a video, it's super uncomfortable. This video is going to essentially be a recap of all the things I've done since I uploaded the last video, so the character creature course I think it was or something. For those people who are interested more in Blender, we have a lot of Blender stuff in here. For the people who are interested in Unreal, we got also a lot of Unreal stuff in here. So I'm going to stick to the timeline in which I did those things in. If you're interested just in particular parts, you gotta scrub through it yourself. But I think I did some quite interesting things, so maybe stick around if you feel like it, I guess. So the first thing I've done after we finished this duck creature course is I did some character practicing. So I started with modeling some base stuff. I followed some tutorials on that. Then I sculpted it using the multi-res. Here you can see some images of it. Used the multi-res to create some different LODs, which worked fine. It's obviously not the most efficient topology, but it didn't matter in this case. It was just a practice. I rigged it as I usually do with a control rig, with Auto Rig Pro. I mean, here you can see some stuff. It deformed pretty well, I'd say. Here you see some stuff. You can look it up on my ArtStation if you're interested. I did some shape keys on it with drivers. You can see the difference. Next, I went to Unreal and I created a gigantic animation library. It's all free animations. Here you can see like 7,310 items. I just used all kinds of free animations I could find on the marketplace, which I got for free, the Paragon animations. I just put it all into one file. And I exported my character using the Unreal bones. So essentially it can use all the animations. Some of them are a tiny bit janky, but in general it retargeted pretty well. I have a lot of different dances in here, a little bit of twerking, I guess. Next, I created a control rig for this character. You can see I got a lot of controls here. It's not very cleaned up. I still gotta work on that. I gotta clean it up so it's visually more appealing and easier to work with. But you can see I got a lot of different, oops, wrong direction. A lot of different things going on here. I got a IK here, got a IK here, got a fist controller, close and open the fingers. We got a look at direction, so you can look in certain directions. I got an eye controller, and just as it did in Blender, it's a bit hard to see because like all of the controls, like I said, I gotta clean this up, but you can see how the eyelids also deform with the look direction, which is pretty nice. I got some controls for closing the eye, actually it's the eyebrow. You see I got confused myself here. Got controls for closing the eye, then individual controls so I can fine tune the eye if needed. Some controls for the nose, I guess. Piggy. A jaw controller, so you can see he's opening the jaw very nicely. This is a tongue control, so I can like drag out the tongue. This is a smile control. Individual lip controls for fine-tuning the lip. And there are also some teeth controller. I wonder which one is the main. This is the main. Here, some teeth controller. And I also implemented the shape keys, so he's also automatically deforming his muscle. You can slightly see it, it's very subtle, but the shape keys or the morph targets in Unreal, they work depending on how much the bones bend. I also implemented some IKs for the fingers. You can see this is pretty good if you're like doing very high quality stuff to trace individual fingers. Yeah, so they collide with the ground. Yeah, same goes for the toes. Maybe a little bit janky. Not everything is perfect in here. I gotta rework this, but this is what I've done. What I also did is when we now play our animation, let's just take a dance here or something. Belly dance, I guess. You can see this animation is not in place, and sometimes you might want it in place. So what I implemented in my control rig here is a in place fix. So let's turn this on to 1, and you can already see now he is dancing in place, which is quite handy if you don't have your animations in place. You can just right click it and create linked animation sequence or bake animation sequence, and you got your animation in place. Now this character took me quite a while. I think actually I took about 2 weeks or something just to work on this character, and I thought, I'm so goddamn slow, this has to be done quicker, especially if I'm doing like simplified anime characters. It has to be done quicker. So I went out of my way and tried some more training. I trained myself every day. Every day I tried to make a new character. I tried to finish a character in 1 day. Not entirely exporting it to Unreal as well, but like at least the Blender part. The Blender part has to be finished in 1 day for a simplified anime character. This has to be done. This has to be possible. So I trained every day for a week trying to make a full character in 1 day. Every day from nothing. This is the first try, obviously didn't get very far, pretty horrible, right? So this is the second day. While I got a little bit further, it's still pretty horrible, let's be honest here. On the third day, I took a little bit of a different approach. While the first two were purely sculpted, this one is modeled with sculpt in addition using the multi-res. I didn't get very far at all, but the proportions looked way better. Now on the fourth day, while the proportions are a little bit further off, I got at least a little bit further. On the fifth day, while it's still not looking very good and this here is just totally off, at least got to the colors and the clothing and whatever. Then on the sixth day, while still stuff is off and I didn't really finish it all, I think I'm approaching something much better. And finally on the seventh day, I finished a character in one day. I'm not entirely happy obviously with it, but it's working, it's a usable result, I would call it. So happy with my result. I also put her into Unreal, so you can see we got her in there. I made some clothes physics and some hair physics, and the head is also a little bit jiggling. This took me around about a day, I guess. And then I moved more into Unreal. Now in Unreal, what I did, you can see we have some lights here on the ground. I created a custom light system. For example, I have the sun up here somewhere, right, where the line is coming from, and it's shading my character here. Not the best, I gotta work on that, but it's working. Most comes down to the model as well. Anyway, and if I move into the shadow here behind the wall, the line isn't hitting something and I get shadow. What I did as well is I created a little light system for individual lights. So we got a light over there, right? So I'm in the shadow. And if I'm going over here, it finds the closest light. You can see it automatically traces a line over there. Stop tracing a line, it's tracing a line. And I get a little bit of light. If I'm getting closer, I get more and more light. So this took me quite a while, I think about a week or two, because I also needed to set up a logic so it always finds the closest one. You can see if I go in here, I have light on the backside where the sun comes from. But if I walk over here, I get light on the front as well because I'm getting closer to this light here. So it's actually working pretty stable. It also is working with different characters. You can see after my training session, I created another character. I'm not entirely happy with her, Miroku from My Hero Academia. Horrible, but you can see it's just working with every kind of character here. No light, and I'm getting closer here, and I'm getting light on her. It's a pretty procedural system where I just plug in my characters and they just work. They also can use all the same animations, all the animation from my 7K animation library, since I'm using the same skeleton asset. It's also pretty important to note that I can just drag in another light here and it will just work. You can see we have light on here. Drag out, no light, in, light. So essentially the lighting system isn't programmed to a certain amount of lights as it usually is. It always finds the closest one. Currently it can just only use one light and the sun at the same time. If I drag another one in here, you can see the other one is turned off and it's going to use that one because that one is closer. If I drag it further away, well, in the viewport there's a little bit of an update error, which I cannot fix just to some limitations, but there you go. Now it's taking this one here. If this one is updated and closer, it's taking this one here, which I don't think is a problem. I could implement it so it can use two individual lights, but it might as well just be overkill, you know, because I think a sun and one additional light is already more than enough and we're basically lit everywhere. Additionally, I also managed to implement a few controls for the light. For example, the sphere radius, so essentially how far the light spreads, right? Then there's the light color, obviously, so the basic light color. And I added an additional thing where you can control the light on the character. So you can see now she's like blooming a lot. The way this works, essentially the right thing is the intensity, right? I can like make it very strong or just a little bit lighter here. Make it a little bit blue or I don't know, a little bit warm, a bit stronger here. So there we go, and we get like a relatively warm light on her. Maybe just the animation looks horrible because if you take a look over here, she's not looking actually that bad, right? And I used also my control rig to set up some animations, fix them a little bit up, and maybe she's floating a bit, okay, but just gonna move it down, I guess. And while we are already at it, I also added a little system which I think is simple but nice. Well, it wasn't that simple, honestly. But I can just drag my blueprint in the scene, so with all the light logic, etc. And I can flip out an animation here. So let's use a dance or something. And you can see if I now simulate this, I can just place my characters with a different animation. Obviously, this one, I need to set up a bit of logic so it's always on the ground. Seems to be like a constant problem, though this will be fixable, no worries. But this is pretty nice. I can just create characters, implement them, make them all use the same animations, and I can place them using different animations. And I have a lighting system which just works on every character. And I want to go a little bit into minor details here for the hairs. Usually I set them up in the physics asset, so in this window here. And I gotta say, I absolutely hate this window. It's one of the, if not the worst windows in, or editors in Unreal. I absolutely despise it. I used it to set up the skirt, which took way too long, honestly, because this window is just super broken. So I found a different solution for the hair. For the hair, I use an add-on which is weirdly enough called Kawaii Physics. And it might look a little bit janky when you like download it and whatever, but it's working like super stable and super easy. So if you do like only jiggle stuff which needs a little bit of collision, I just recommend this, even if you're not using anime characters or whatever. It's just super good. And super lightweight as well. I could make a tutorial on that if you're interested. And the add-on is like 15 megabytes big. It's super simple math. And you can still set up like collisions and stuff. You can see the collisions here, and it's just like, it's just working. With a typical physics asset, you always get problems and jank and whatever, so this is super cool. Yeah, while I don't really like the model I made here, we can take a look at the long hair here, how it's working. You can see how pretty accurate it actually falls around the arm and whatever. So I really, really like this add-on, and it's very simple to use. You can see there's a lot of stuff here, which is scary, but honestly, this is actually very, very easy. And I might make a tutorial on that for you. Okay, so this covers essentially what I've done. Now there is a little bit more, which I'm currently struggling with, but for that we're going back into Blender and I'm going to explain you what I'm struggling with and what I've been working on. So what is it I tried to do? I tried to work on an environment now that I have a pretty solid character system workflow. I wanted to create a city, a semi-procedural city, so I still have the controls, but don't need to place everything manually. And here you see this absolute abomination of a file where I tried and played around with geometry nodes. So I just played around for like 2 weeks and tried to learn it. It's actually pretty awesome, but it limits you a lot. For example, we have this like building setup here where like an array thing for houses where you can array the bottom floor, the middle floor, and you can just add more floors if you wanted to. And this setup works pretty solid, but then I tried to create apartments and buildings and etc. So here you can see I tried to like generate rooms. They don't make a lot of sense, to be honest. But in the end, it turned out to be a pretty good like dungeon generator. So yeah, this maybe has some use, but like it is more like a dungeon generator than a building room generator. I made like a bazillion different variations of this where you can like paint with colors to generate like things on there. Yeah, gosh, yeah, like direction painting and whatever. Though it's all not very handy, to be honest. I also ended up like downloading this flow map painter. By the way, I really recommend this. This is pretty awesome. And I used this flow map painter to essentially like create a flow map for placing things. There you can see I can make them all point down, or in this case to the left, I guess, or to another direction. Just gotta rotate the original object a bit. But this works actually pretty solid. Then I created like a 3D version, which is kind of nice, honestly. If I use the flow map here and I'm going to paint around, you can see how it's painting into the direction I want to and spawns those things there. Additionally, we have this normal intensity. If I change this normal, we can also paint on here, but I'm going to do it over here now. From normal, we have their intensity. So if I like make this black and paint black, it's going to not respect the normal as much. If you put it to 1, I use a pretty big image here, but it's going to go overkill with the normal. If you make it 0.5, it's essentially default. So you can kind of bend them into directions. And you can also change between different objects. So here we can use hair if we wanted to, or feathers. So I can now use the normal intensity map. Yeah, I can let it stand a little bit more up, right? Maybe I can give it a bit more direction. So let's use the flow map here, and I'm just going to like make them all go in one direction here. Now I can use the normal intensity map, and I can make it dark eventually. And you can see I can make them stand a little bit more up by painting a little bit more white in here. Still respecting the normal though. You get the point. You can also use random points for that. So like it spawns kind of random, but for some reason it seems to like mess up the rotation of the feathers. So this is when you use random points, not very solid. If you use the vertice points, it's actually pretty solid, pretty stable. So I went a bit of tangents with this flow map stuff here, just as I did in this video, because back to my environment idea. Originally wanted to create an environment for my game stuff. So I realized I'm never going to get anywhere using geometry nodes, because you just simply don't have the information where are what rooms. It's just a mess, yeah. So this is not a way to do it, at least not in Blender. So my idea was, okay, I'm going to build apartments a little bit differently. For that, I downloaded the full version of Archimesh, which I think it's a bit annoying, but it's working relatively good. You can like get yourself some walls here and whatever, and you can like draw them. You can see exactly 10 meters or something. You can draw another wall here, 5 meters or something, and then yeah, over here, and close it up. And you can draw another wall, and you can like draw yourself your room essentially. I'm just doing this very quick now. Yeah, you can see it's a little bit, sometimes it's super annoying. But yeah, in that way I created an apartment. Not really finished yet. And this is where I am right now. Of course I learned geometry nodes, but it's super annoying for me because I wasted like 2 freaking weeks on that, realizing it's never going to work anyway, at least not in the current state, because like I said, you don't know where the rooms are. If you export it to Unreal, you just have only the mesh, you don't have like the information where is what, right? So the idea right now is create individual apartments in Archipack, in Blender, bring those over to Unreal and create a system there. Because I know in Unreal you have like these utility systems which allow you to program essentially small tools for yourself. I didn't look too much into it, but it didn't seem too complicated. So I definitely want to look into the utility systems. Maybe create tiny tools, maybe going to share this on my Patreon, who knows, and essentially create this semi-procedural city in Unreal. Those are my current plans. Not promising anything, but eventually I'll be able to make the city fully destructible. We will see. I don't know how this is going to play out performance-wise. Maybe I can despawn them really quickly or something. I don't know. But the plan is to create a semi-procedural city which is kind of destructible with all interior and stuff. In my mind, this is totally doable, doing a full city with full interior. It shouldn't be a problem, honestly. Especially not if we're going to use Unreal 5 with a world partition system. I'm going to plan to put it into Unreal 5 with a world partition where it like chops up your map and whatever. And maybe I'm going to do some tutorials on it. Like I said in this video, I think I'm going to do a tutorial on the Kawaii physics thing, because it's not very well covered. I had to figure this out myself, even though it was very easy. So if you're interested in anything I just told you about, just let me know in the comments and I can cover it more properly. But yeah, this is where I am right now, and I just did this little update video for you, for me. Yeah, that's just, it is what it is, right?